Hello everybody and welcome to this week's Club Zone video. My name's Rob Howlett, I'm the Regional Development Officer for the Southwest. This week we're going to be looking at rules for bars and catering and ways to make your bar and catering safe and successful during these really difficult times. Joining me this evening we've got Dave Kelly, who most importantly is a sailor. He's the Rear Commodore of sailing, in fact, at Whitefriars Sailing Club. Dave's got a long history in the hospitality industry and indeed in catering as well. He's worked in New York City as a chef, worked for large chains such as the Hilton, and along the way gained an MBA, as well as working as a consultant for KPMG. So you can see we're really in safe hands with Dave. As well as Dave owning his own restaurants, he's now moved on to looking after different sized hotels, restaurants as a consultant. So I'm sure you'll all be pleased to hear some of Dave's comments on some of the questions that you've been posing to your regional development officers in the past couple of weeks. So welcome, Dave. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Yeah, great. Okay, so Dave, I think we probably want to start with kind of the viability and the reasons behind opening catering for clubs. I mean, what sort of decisions should clubs be thinking about before they do it?
Well, first thing is that clubs are permitted to serve food and drinks now, but under the COVID restrictions in a COVID-safe way. So the first thing that you would need to do is determine, are you COVID safe, or how do you become COVID safe? And really, the first step on that is taking your risk assessment out and adding to it using the context of what the government guidance is for operating in a COVID-safe way during this pandemic. The risk assessment has got to take into account certain key areas. And one is protection of your members, protection of the members of your club, because you don't want to make anybody ill or avoid contaminating people as much as possible. Protection of the people who are actually serving the food. How are you going to clean, and other small items like the required signage for hand washing, sanitizing stations. How do you control usage of the toilets, reminding people about masks. All of these things you just need to go through and step by step and assess how it works for your operation.
Yeah, so that's quite a lot of work, isn't it? I guess clubs have really got to think about whether that level of work, especially if they're volunteer-led, is achievable for them. To go through all of that hard work is a big ask of any volunteer club. If they decided not to go that far, and for example, just have an urn in the corner or a kettle in the corner, how does that work for a club?
Well, in that instance, you probably, if you have a kettle or an urn, you probably have already updated your risk assessment just to say how you're going to control access to your clubhouse. I don't think that needs quite the in-depth work as if you're deciding to actually serve meals. So at Whitefriars, we have put the urn in the corner of the clubhouse, and just to keep things as tight as possible, we have basically a one-in, one-out system. So you go in and get your tea, and you come out, and you can sit outside, enjoy the beautiful English sunshine, as long as you stay in a group of 6 at our outside tables.
Yeah, fantastic. Okay, so that's really good. Earlier on, we were having a conversation about clubs that serve alcohol and clubs that don't, and the difference that actually that makes, and it's a massive difference, actually, isn't it? Can you explain that to us a little bit?
Actually, it is. So first of all, the toughest restriction is just serving alcohol on its own, and what you cannot do is operate a bar in the traditional bar sense. People walk up, have a drink, chat with everybody, stand at the bar. That's over now. All food and drink now has to be by table service, which means that, and this might be challenging for volunteer clubs, is you need to have a server, a waiter or waitress who actually takes your order, goes and gets the drink or goes and gets the food and brings it back to you at the table that you're sitting at. And that's regardless of whether it's inside or outside. If you serve alcohol, it's table service, and there's no way around it.
Okay, so how about if we've got a hatch at the club and we want to serve food through a hatch for a takeaway style service? does that mean that we then can't serve alcohol?
Yeah, that's correct. Actually, you can serve food out of a takeaway hatch if you do not serve alcohol. If it's from a hatch, you still need to have tables for everybody, and everybody needs to consume their food and drink, the non-alcoholic drink, at a table, but they can come to the hatch and collect it themselves and go and sit down. So you can't have people milling around eating sandwiches. They must be seated, and they must be seated in groups of no more than 6. As soon as you serve a drop of alcohol, then it becomes table service.
Yeah, that could be really challenging for some clubs, and I think it's a very clear distinction as well. So it's quite helpful. There's a lot of ambiguity in these rules, and knowing that that's a clear-cut rule is really helpful.
Yes.
So how about the tier system then? You know, these 3 tiers have been criticised nationally, and for some people they're working, and for some people they're not. In the Southwest, where you and I are, we're still very much in tier 1. What are the rules for tier 1 for a club with a restaurant that's open, or a catering facility that's open?
Okay, so for tier 1, the rule of 6 applies, and that means that you can permit groups of up to 6 people, both inside and outside. You need to keep your groups of 6 separated. You have to have the social distancing of 2 meters between groups of 6. The only exception to that is if you have a family or a support bubble that's greater than 6 people. So if you have 8 people in a household, or 2 households of 4 who are joined together in a support bubble, then they can all sit together. So other rules include the wearing of masks for staff. So by staff, I mean the volunteers, if you have a volunteer organization or staff, and for customers when they're not seated inside. And there's a 10 p.m. closure for all serving of food and drink on premises. Now, tier 2 takes it, it's technically called high alert. And under this, you can only see customers from a single household or support bubble together inside. So you can no longer mix people in your group of 6. It has to be just households. Outside, you can still mix people, but they still have to be in the group of 6. And they call it the rule of 6 laws. And details must be collected from at least one person in the group if they attend the club. I think most clubs are doing that now anyway, because that was the rule before. And face coverings need to be worn all times when you're not sitting at a table and consuming food and drink. The third tier, sorry, did you have a question about that?
No, you go for it. Yeah, go for the 3rd tier.
The 3rd tier, the very high alert, you can't serve food or beverage in general at these places. But I think most clubs would close under tier 3 anyway, so the very high alert. So and that's basically it in a nutshell.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you're right about tier 3 and most clubs being closed. And I think you're also very right in saying that most clubs now are using this QR code. You know, it's legislation that they have to have a QR code up. So people are scanning those codes when they're coming onto site, and they can use the same QR code for their bar or restaurant as they can for the clubhouse itself. So they're able to scan and scan once at the gate or scan once at the entrance, and then that's good for all of their activity in the club that day or that period that they're there. So all of that information on tiers is really important, as many of us are going to be moving up and down through those tiers in the next few months. So thanks very much for that info, Dave. I think really helpful. This video, of course, is a picture of a moment in time, and things will change. If people need more information, Dave, where should they be going?
Well, you can contact your local council, environmental health, and they will, they're usually very helpful in trying to point you in the right direction and give you some good advice. The other place is the government guidance on the government website. So the government guidance, if you put in Google, government guidance for pubs, bars, and restaurants, there's a very good document there. Finally, the UK Hospitality Association has a very detailed document. In fact, I found it was 168 pages today in their latest revision, and goes into great detail into how you can deliver hospitality during the pandemic.
Brilliant. We'll stick all of the links to that in this video, so that people can access them through the contents below the video. So please do have a look at those and click on them if you think it's going to be useful for your club, and do really research what's allowed in your area before you try to operate, if you're not already operating. And if you are operating a bar or restaurant, please do ensure you're regularly checking what the changes are on those bits of guidance. It's super important that you stay up to date. Dave, thank you very much for your advice today. I think it's been absolutely priceless. I wouldn't have wanted to answer any of those questions, I think. So thank you very much.
Pleasure.
Great. Okay, and happy sailing over the next couple of months. And let's hope we all get out on the water. To the clubs that have watched, thank you very much for your time and efforts that all the volunteers are giving. We know how hard it is to keep your clubs open, yet alone your bars and restaurants. So thanks again. Thanks for watching.